The 40's and Under initiative is about forming community among younger generations of contemplatives. Through offering online centering prayer groups and retreat weekends to deepen the practice, the 40's and Under initiative aims to connect young contemplatives that are already practicing centering prayer. Online introductory workshops are also offered to introduce the method of centering prayer to those without knowledge or experience of it. This group also aims to collect the writings of the participants in centering prayer and related to these themes of interest of the younger generation, and put these writings into different formats to be shared with the community. So let me introduce to you now the two reps from this particular initiative. First, we have Colleen Thomas, who is a spiritual director and television producer with an MA in theology and art from Fuller Theological Seminary. Based in Los Angeles, she's founder and curator of Soul Care LA, an urban monastery, offering spiritual companionship for enterprising artists, entertainers, and the entertainment professionals. She'll also be sharing this segment with Keith Kristich, who is a commissioned presenter of Centering Prayer and leader of the online contemplative community called Closer Than Breath, which offers regular monthly contemplative retreats and live courses to deepen the practice of centering prayer. Keith is a spiritual director, Enneagram teacher, and coach to those looking to weave contemplative awareness with the psychological insights of the Enneagram. Keith aims to help people slow down and reconnect their true selves through contemplation, meditation, and the Enneagram. And now, with great pleasure, I hand this over to Colleen and Keith.
Thank you, Mark. It's such a joy and an honor to be here and to be sharing this presentation with Keith, who really invited me into this community, and I would say fitting to our topic, which is younger contemplatives. Keith and I actually met on Instagram, as the kids do these days. So we're Instagram buddies and who share a common vision and passion for contemplative prayer, centering prayer in particular, and a deep desire to see others who look like us in these rooms and in these communities. I felt like I wanted to begin with a particular perspective on the history of centering prayer. As I was thinking about how I could add to this presentation with Keith, it dawned on me that at one time, Father Keating was himself a 40's and under. As the history goes, he and others living at St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts, were inspired by the decree of Vatican II. At that time, in, I believe, 1962, Father Keating would have been 34 years old, and inspired by a challenge to bring this contemplative practice to a larger community. A few years later, in 1968, the Beatles took off for India to study TM, Transcendental Meditation. And Father Keating would have been 45 years old at that age. So still technically a 40's and under. And I think that's interesting to the origin of how we all came to be invited into this practice. Because in a way, as Father Keating and William Menninger and Basil Pennington were noticing this movement of young people into Spencer, Massachusetts, to a nearby Buddhist meditation center. In a way, they're offering this practice and thinking of how to offer this practice was indeed inspired by young contemplatives. It was a younger generation at that time in the 60s and 70s that were seeking something that they knew had roots also in our Christian faith. And I think we all do well to consider that. And we find ourselves in a similar place now that they might have been, with how do we do this? How do we offer this old way to a new generation? But we might begin to consider how to, with remembering what drew us to this practice, because at some point, like Father Keating, we were all 40s and under. One of the things that Keith and I talked about was that perhaps in our breakout sessions today, we can consider with one another ourselves years ago. We came up with the name 40s and under because at the time that we were talking, I was 39. So I was just about to be 40. And if we'd said 40 and under, or under 40, I would have been cut off. So the 40s still gives us an opportunity to see people born on that cusp. You know, my birth date year is 1980, which when I tell people that, sometimes I get this, oh my gosh, reaction, because it sounds like yesterday. I was not alive through the 60s and 70s. But many of you in this community were. And so I think I just want to extend a simple invitation to you all today as you hear more from Keith about what we are doing with this vision for a 40s and under initiative, to remember your time in the 60s and 70s, what you were longing for, what drew you to centering prayer, what drew you to the contemplative life. And that might offer us some insight as to how to appeal to a younger generation so that we might carry on the tradition of Father Keating. And also this afternoon, I know we'll be hearing from those who gathered in Snowmass in 2017 at the behest of Father Keating and others who, prior to his death, sensed the importance of identifying and leaving this tradition in the hands of those who could carry it on. And so while Keith and I were not at that gathering, and I never had the privilege of meeting Father Keating, I consider him a spiritual father and mentor, and am grateful to be in this community and family, practicing centering prayer with you all, and learning from you all, really learning from you all, and using the knowledge that I gained to inspire others. So with that, I will pass it off to Keith so that he can give you a lot more context about what we have been doing and what we hope to do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Colleen. So good to hear those words, and a true honor to be working with you and Mark and others on this project here. So thank you. And to be really clear, to be working on this infant of a project, very much a baby of a project. This has just been months in the making, where we have a couple online groups, which you'll hear about in a few minutes. But just to be clear, this is really brand new in many ways, and could use the support of you listening here, which we'll get into at the end. I'd like to, I'll sort of speak through sort of the three pillars of the project, sort of the vision of where we're going, not quite where we are, but where we're going. talk about where we are currently, and then just a few small ways that you might even be of a help. But to start, the overarching vision is really about creating contemplative community for younger generations. I know I've been facilitating a centering prayer group for 8 years, and often I've been leading contemplative workshops, retreats, weekly groups, and most people are twice my age. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy it. I love it. But it is very nice when there's younger faces and people in similar circumstances. And I'm sure you've had young people frequent your centering prayer groups or retreats and workshops, coming in and coming out. And so this is really fundamentally about creating space for young contemplatives that are sharing similar life situations, sharing, living in the same life stages, living in certain similar lifestyles. And bringing those contemplatives together. So that's sort of at the base of this. Sort of the 3 ways that this is, we're looking at this is around creating contemplative prayer groups and weekend retreats and workshops for those that are already practicing centering prayer. There's certainly already young contemplatives, 40's and under. And by that, as Colleen said, 40's means 49 and under. Don't worry, we don't ID people in the Zoom room if you want to come in. But we are trying to create a certain kind of community, and there's certainly already people practicing. So in one sense, our work is just about connecting the dots. There's a centering prayer young person in Hawaii that practices alone, that's never practiced with another group before. And so finally, an invitation to join other young contemplatives in this journey. So it's really about creating those groups. Currently, we just have 2. I'd like to see 4 in 2 months. I'd like to see 6 in 4 months. I'd love to see 12 by the end of 2022, for example. So it's about creating more groups, creating more leaders that are able to facilitate these groups so that they're not only for young people, but they're also led by young people. It's not just young people going to groups, but it's about the leadership, contemplative outreach, giving the skills of facilitator training and giving young people the tools and skill set that they need to facilitate these groups themselves. So that's the first pillar, sort of connecting the contemplatives that are already floating around but are disconnected from one another. The second is creating opportunities for new people, perhaps for contemplatives that don't even know they're contemplatives, perhaps for that 30-year-old in Pennsylvania that likes to spend a quiet morning over a cup of coffee in the silence and quiet and doesn't have a practice to sort of engage the silence with. So this is what contemplative outreach does, right? Promoting the practice of centering prayer, doing introductory workshops to either refresh people's practice or to introduce people that have never heard of centering prayer before, just by circumstance. And so this is about creating online workshops, introductory workshops that are specifically geared to young people. Again, ideally led by young people. We haven't been able to do this, although the mission statement that Mark read earlier says we are running introductory programs. We haven't done that. We will be doing that. But again, it's about giving them the resources, preparing young people to be the leaders themselves, to present those and to present it to people that are new to the practice. And certainly people are hungry for this. Young people are hungry for spirituality, for depth spirituality, for contemplative spirituality, for an intimate relationship with the divine. And so they're there. It's just about reaching them in new ways. For example, on social media or as Instagram, as Colleen says, there's lots of avenues in ways that we didn't have Instagram and Facebook 30 years ago to create contemplative offerings or connect with people in those ways. So that's the second piece, is offering the contemplative prayer to others that are unfamiliar with the practice. The third sort of piece of this initiative is around sharing the writing of centering prayer by young people. There's younger generations that are writers. There's younger people that are practicing centering prayer and also happen to be writing about the spiritual life. And so one of the goals is to create some sort of young contemplatives column, perhaps under the contemplative outreach umbrella, that would be shared to the contemplative outreach community as a way to promote writings of young people. I'm thrilled when I find out new books are coming out on centering prayer. Just last year, Lindsay Boyer and Rich Lewis wrote 2 new books on centering prayer. Maybe you know this week there's a brand new book on centering prayer. The author is Dr. Brian something. I don't even know his last name, but there's a brand new book on centering prayer coming out this week. And so I'm thrilled when there's more writings on centering prayer coming out, that it's not just going to be Thomas Keating and Cynthia Bourgeot and David Frenette, and then we're just not going to have any more, but the writing would continue. And so part of this is about lifting up the voices of young people that are practicing centering prayer around themes that are interesting to young people. So I think of themes around social justice, centering prayer and social justice, centering prayer and social action. What does the contemplative voice have to say to the Black Lives Matter movement, or to climate change, or any number of major social issues? What is the contemplative voice, and what's the centering prayer message in those? Or what is the relationship to centering prayer and mindfulness? We're inundated with mindfulness, and young people as well. Even in our workspaces, mindfulness is being promoted. And so that's a super wonderful thing, but what is the distinction? What is centering prayer, just Christian mindfulness or not? Is it somewhat distinct? And so looking at different themes that are specifically interested to young people, and then promoting the writing of young people themselves. So those are the 3 sort of pillars: creating the space, connecting the dots for centering prayer practitioners that are young, that are already practicing. Second, bringing new people into the practice. And then third, creating writing around themes that are interesting to young people from the voice of young people, in the hopes of perhaps gathering those writings to publish a book. In the sense, there's been few centering prayer books that are collections of different writers together. So that's sort of the overarching vision. I'll speak to the, currently we just have 2 groups that run. Colleen and I both run groups. We've intentionally ran those in the evening, which is when young people seem to be a little bit more available to meet at that time. And so we've had 80 people sign up for those groups. Certainly 80 people don't come to those 2 groups. That would be probably too big. But we do have 80 people with interest signed up for those. And we aim to continue to create more groups as we create more group facilitators. Also in the chat, they're going to drop our link. Thank you. That's a link that you can share. So I'll end just sharing very simply 3 ways that you can really support. The first is to share that sign-up page. It was dropped in the chat there. So if you know young people that are already doing centering prayer or are interested in creating contemplative community, share that link with them. It's very simple for them to sign up. And both our contact, Colleen and I, are on that. And so please promote that. Feel free to connect us with other young leaders. If you know somebody that's 40 that runs a centering prayer group, or has thought about running a centering prayer group, connect them to us. If you know a centering prayer person that's also a writer, that loves writing, connect them to us, because we want to reach these people that are already actively in these worlds. And then the third, you can email Colleen and I. My email is I guess I don't know Colleen's email by heart, but mine is just keith@keithkristich.com. So if you know my name, that's my email address. So you can please reach out and email us as you know people within this network. And I think that does it. Mark, back over to you.
Thank you, Colleen and Keith, for this important work that you're doing. And thank you for letting us in on it as well.